to be talking about invisible people yet again. The group this time I thought of was people living in shame. Their shame renders them invisible. I thought about the woman at the well. I wasn't really sure I could talk about her. Well, I guess I could talk about her for a few minutes. But anyway, what I did was I Googled invisible people of the Bible to kind of give me a little boost. And what happened, what I found when I Googled that was a sermon that was preached by a pastor, Jack Lash, at Gainesville Presbyterian in Gainesville, Virginia. That sermon occurred January 1st, 2023. And he started out by talking about it was the year of Revelation. He was going to be talking about Revelation for 44 weeks, a sermon for 44 weeks on Revelation. And that happened in 2023, and I can't wait. And I'll tell you why. Next year, Bible Study Fellowship, if you're looking for a Bible study, it's fantastic. Everybody all over the world, not everybody, but people all over the world are studying the same scripture the same time. So I would recommend that. Look that up. So next year in Bible Study Fellowship, we are studying Revelation. I wanted to kind of get a head start on it, so I have been reading Greg Laurie's book, Revelation, and plan to read Ron Rhodes's book, 40 Days Through Revelation, and now I have 44 sermons to get me through. And so that caught my attention. But the other thing was he did speak about the woman at the well. And what he said, the whole thing was just amazing to me. So the woman who went to the well at a different time of the day than everybody else to remain invisible actually had an encounter with Jesus at the well. And you wouldn't expect him to speak to her. 1, because she was a woman. 2, because she was a Samaritan. And 3, because she was living immorally. But he did speak to her. And that conversation changed her life. She ran away from the conversation, dropped her jar to fill for water, and ran away from the conversation to the townspeople saying, "Come and see a man who told me everything about me." Jesus saw her. He spoke to her. She was not invisible to him. And his conversation with her changed her life. The next one that he spoke about in his sermon was so amazing to me too, because it came from the book of John as well. And it was about the blind man. Now, we studied the book of John, and what I didn't see was what he mentioned in his sermon, even though I studied it intensely last year. So the blind man, excuse me, Jesus saw the blind man. And I just kind of overlooked that whole thing last year. So they were, if you remember, the blind man was sitting, he'd been blind from birth, and he was sitting on the side of the road, and Jesus saw him. The disciples, it doesn't say the disciples saw him and said to Jesus. It said Jesus saw him, and the disciples asked him what happened that he became blind. Was it his parents' sin or was it his sin? And this pastor takes you back to the fact that Jesus saw him and the disciples asked him. So I can just picture Jesus seeing him and then just going like this, putting his arms out behind him to stop the disciples so that they will see him too. The message is this: we are called to see the invisible people and then to do what Jesus did. In the story, Jesus did heal the blind man. He put saliva made of mud, put it on the blind man's eyes, instructed him to go to the pool of Siloam and to rinse them off, and he got his sight from that. And it changed his life. His encounter with Jesus changed his life. So what does that mean to you and me? We are called to see the invisible people, and we are called to do what Jesus did. So to see invisible people, we have to look. And to look like Jesus, we have to care. And caring is demonstrated through love. And to love people, we can love them and say we love them, but to truly change their lives, we have to love. It's a verb, it's an action word. So the people that are in your life are there for a reason. The people that you encounter and see, the invisible people that you see through the eyes of the heart, and Jesus puts them in your life for a reason. You have an opportunity to love them. I talked last week about the elderly and about reaching out to the elderly who feel invisible, who may seem invisible, who may otherwise be invisible, and there's a way that you can love them. Well, anybody in your life who is invisible, you have an opportunity to see them, to care about them, and to love them. And that's today's message. So I hope that you enjoy it. I was touched by the Lord when all of this transpired, and so much so that I had to reach out to the pastor of the church in Gainesville, Virginia, to say this. Even a year, almost, I guess, a year and a half later, it made a difference for me, and I told him I'd be speaking about it. So Jack Lash from Gainesville, Virginia, here's your story.